We're recording, folks, and you're listening to it if you've tuned into the YouTube. And we've got Jim Hastings and Ron and Betty here to see what we can come up with and share with you. And maybe somebody else will be dropping in, but I'm sure we can fill the bill here. So Jim has just told me he's got a couple of anecdotes. So why don't we start with you, Jim? Is that if that's all right?
So these came about in 1987. 1987, in the 3 weeks between Amartithi and Baba's birthday, Herman Lowe and I decided to go and visit. This is basically my idea: visit places of pilgrimage, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, um, as well as places that were associated with Baba. And um, I think the sort of origins of that desire to do that is at a certain point I began to wonder, what is it about Indian culture, the Indian society, that it seems to provide such a fertile ground for various kinds of spiritual traditions. And so the plan was to visit some places of Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist pilgrimage, visit places associated with Baba, and so on. So we set off. Um, we went originally to Dehradun and Mussoorie. Then we went to Rishikesh, Haridwar, Varanasi, Sarnath, Bodh Gaya, then back to Jaipur. From Jaipur, we went to Ajmer and Pushkar, then to Agra, and then back to Mehrabad. And so in one day, we took a train from uh, Jaipur to Ajmer. It's about a 1 hour train trip. Spent most of the morning and early afternoon in Ajmer. Took a bus about half an hour from there to Pushkar, wandered around there, had some experiences, and then went back to Jaipur the same day. So I'm going to read part of this uh, because I want to sort of get the details correct, if that's okay. So I said, while we were in Jaipur, we took the train to Ajmer, an important center of Islamic pilgrimage, to visit the Dargah, or the tomb shrine of Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti, a 12th century Sufi perfect master whom Meher Baba identified as the Kutub-e-Irshad, the head of the spiritual hierarchy of his time. His Dargah is still a popular place of pilgrimage that attracts Muslims and others, including Meher Baba, due in part to its reputation for miracles. Sorry, my phone is going off in the background here. It'll stop in a minute.
Can't hear it.
Okay. Baba first visited the shrine in 1922, then again in 1935 and 1939. In 1939, during a prolonged stay in Ajmer for contacting local musts, he visited it several times. Eruch has related that on one late night visit he bowed to the tomb thousands of times. Regarding such visits, Baba explained, quote, "By my living presence I clean the tangled atmosphere of the shrines of the dead saints and sadgurus." So this was Herman's first and only trip to Ajmer. It was my first trip as well, although subsequently I visited it several more times in later years. Having done so, I came to realize that those managing the Dargah have a standard way of dealing with foreigners. As we stepped off the train at Ajmer, we were approached by a man in a long green kafni who asked if we were going to the Dargah. When we said that we were, he asked us to follow him. He took us on about a 10-minute walk through winding streets until we came to a long, about 4-block long, pedestrian only street. Rising before us at the end of the street, a few blocks away, was the impressive entrance to the large compound surrounding the Dargah. The first order of business was to make sure we had head coverings, so we stopped halfway down the street to purchase Islamic caps. As we were being led down the street, we noticed a man lying on his back in the middle of the road. His clothing was dusty and disheveled. His eyes were open and staring seemingly at the sun, and yet there was a beatific glow on his face. We quickly moved on, keeping up with our guide, but then passed another such figure. Surely, we concluded, these may be God-intoxicated musts who were reputedly drawn to this shrine. When we arrived before the entrance, we were shown a stand situated off to the right where we removed our shoes and checked them. We then walked up a low set of marble stairs, entered the compound through an ornate gateway, and were led through several courtyards filled with hundreds of pilgrims to a man seated on the ground near the tomb itself. Here we were asked to sit. Speaking English, the man politely asked where we had come from and why we had come. He seemed satisfied when we explained that we had come to experience the spiritual atmosphere of the place, then asked us to make a donation, which we did. This was basically the standard response, respectful treatment I experienced on subsequent visits to the Dargah. All in all, the Muslim keepers of the shrine understood that not all pilgrims to the shrine were Muslim. Many Hindus and others frequented the spot due to its reputation for miracles. Once we had explained our presence and made a modest donation, we were escorted to the line for darshan. This involved going into the relatively small room, which was largely occupied by a tomb in the middle, which was covered by a massive green silk covering. Following protocols, we circumambulated the tomb in a counterclockwise direction, stopped at one corner to lower our heads while an attendant lifted the covering and covered our heads with it for a few seconds. Coming out of the tomb itself into the enormous courtyard surrounding it, we realized that we were now largely being ignored. There was a troupe singing qawwali near the tomb's exit, so we decided to sit off to one side and enjoy the music and the spiritual atmosphere which we were beginning to sense. Periodically, Muslim pilgrims would notice the two Caucasian foreigners and would come sit quietly beside us. After a short pause, they would ask us where we came from and what we were doing there. When they would learn that we were Americans who had a good idea of the significance of where we were, they would offer words of welcome and move on. All in all, we felt very comfortable and accepted there. The next hour and a half or two, maybe 2 hours, one qawwali group after another performed before the tomb, becoming more and more intense in their devotional expressions, while crowds of bystanders would cheer, throw money at them, and shout, Allahu Akbar. We sat there for perhaps 2 hours, becoming more and more impacted by the atmosphere until we quite literally felt intoxicated by what we were experiencing. We were filled with an almost tangible bliss. At some point, we made our way out. Little did we know what awaited us there. I distinctly recall stepping over the threshold of the entrance onto the marble stairs. Just as I stepped off the last step and onto the ground in front of it, that is, just as I literally set foot outside of the Dargah, I glanced up and saw that we were facing a semicircle of about a dozen imploring beggars with outstretched hands. Ignoring them, we walked over to collect our shoes and put them on. Having done so, we saw that the crowd of beggars had followed us and was watching us put on our shoes. Realizing that there was no way we could satisfy them all, we made our way through the crowd and began to walk away, trying to ignore them. The crowd of beggars followed us, becoming more vocal, and some began to grab at our arms and backpacks. We walked faster, but however much we sped up, they kept pace with us. We became desperate to find an auto rickshaw to escape, but we're still on the pedestrian street. We began to jog, then run, but many of them ran after us. Then, looking down a side street, we sighted an auto rickshaw. We quickly jumped in and asked him to take us to the bus stand for the bus to Pushkar. He started up, but as he was going, we looked back and saw still half a dozen or so beggars chasing us. Two of them grabbed onto the rickshaw and began to be dragged through the street, still calling out for arms. This must have frightened the driver as he sped up enough to cause them to fall off. However, just as we were about to breathe sighs of relief, the auto rickshaw hit a bump in the road. Herman and I both flew up out of our seats and banged our heads on the crossbar of the roof, splitting them open. Trying to stop the bleeding, experiencing headaches, we were struck by how suddenly we had been brought down from our state of euphoria to a state of physical pain and anxiety. What a come down. We interpreted this sudden turn of events as a lesson from Baba, though to this day, I'm not sure what that lesson might have been. That's the story of the lesson. That sudden shift from really kind of filled with a kind of bliss and euphoria due to the atmosphere, and suddenly, bang, coming down to earth.
Did you experience those kinds of beggars in other places? So many?
Not so, not a kind of, no, not at all, right? Not that kind of aggressiveness, yeah. So there's a
It seems
coda
that
to
Baba
that.
would
Go ahead.
sometimes bring some people who may be distracted from or taken into focusing on something spiritual that wasn't really directly related to him. You know, maybe the jealous
Well, yeah,
God thing.
yeah, I kind of think that was it. It's like, yes, enjoy the spiritual atmosphere, but don't get carried away.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. That's I was
Yeah.
just reading something like Baba said, you don't have to, you know, avoid things in life, or uh, just don't get attached to them. Enjoy them and
Right,
let them go. Right?
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
there's a coda to this story, which is a little bit shorter coda. About 20 years later, in 2006, I returned to Ajmer with a student whose research I was supervising. It's notable that this was in the midst of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, a period during which many Muslims worldwide disapproved of American policies. Yet our experience was more or less a repetition of my earlier visits, being met at the Ajmer railway station by a representative, walking to the Dargah, making a modest donation, and experiencing darshan in the tomb. This time, as we exited, we saw that a new Qawwali troop was setting up directly in front of the shrine and that a crowd was beginning to form around them. Seeking to blend in, we sat down amongst the male audience. Soon there were about 4 rows of spectators sitting in a large semicircle around the troupe led by a young singer of about 20. We were in the second row. As they began to perform, more spectators came and stood behind those who were seated. All in all, there were several hundred people in the audience. As the performance continued, the music became more and more intense, and the audience responded accordingly with shouts of approval. In this tradition, it's common for members of the audience to jump up and scatter rupee notes over the musicians, especially when the lead singer sings a particularly poignant verse. We sat for a considerable time enjoying the music and watching various listeners scattering rupees over the musicians. At a certain point, my companion and I began to notice that one of the most fervent listeners, who was seated facing us, seemed to be eyeing us carefully. After a while, he caught my eye and began to gesture towards me. Soon I understood that he wanted me to also jump up and scatter rupee notes over the musicians. He even held out a handful for me to use. Not wanting to create a scene by refusing, I accepted them, and at an appropriate verse stood up and threw the money over the head of the singer. Immediately there were unexpected, loud, and excited shouts of Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. As I sat down and looked around, I realized that they were expressing delight and approval upon seeing a Westerner appreciating and participating in this musical and religious tradition. I could also see that many more pilgrims were rushing over to see what was causing all the commotion. Pleased with the reaction, the same man handed me another handful of rupee notes. I stood up to repeat the process. A white non-Muslim standing amidst a crowd of 500 or more Muslims, mostly men, and again was met with shouts of approval. Ultimately, I repeated this action 4 or 5 times. Soon the concert was completed. We got up and began to walk away, but were stopped by the young lead singer, who asked where we came from. When we replied that we were Americans, he burst into tears and threw his arms around us, explaining how touched he was that Americans had come to appreciate his music. So that was a more very positive.
Was this the same Darga of Wendyut and Chisti?
Yeah, same Darga, yeah. Some 20 years later. Yeah.
What do you got, Betty? Anything
Oh,
else? Yeah.
I was just remembering being in the audience. You probably do too. When these two, Herman and Jim, came back from the great trip, we saw the slides, and I remember it was a big deal. It was a big event to hear about your trip.
I don't remember that at all.
Mhm.
But I'll take your word for it.
And I don't know if it was near the time that Herman's wife, Jeanette, unexpectedly, died.
This would have been in 87. Yeah.
That was pretty early. Yeah. Uh-huh.
That was actually before he married her, maybe even before he knew her. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, maybe I might be. He wasn't there on the second trip, was he, Herman?
No, yeah, no. My current wife and I lived in Jaipur for a year in 97, 98. And so we visited it, I think, maybe twice, something like that, in the 90s. And then my last visit there was in 2006.
Well, when I told a dream, I was totally it's not non sequitur, not really, but was on my mind. Do you want to hear a dream? Or um, I was talking to Archie group. Unless you'd have something you want to say, Ron, or
Oh yeah, I've got plenty. But go ahead.
I have another story that happened later the same day, but go ahead with your dream.
tell it so that it's in sequence. That would be better.
You think so?
Yeah.
Well, really picked up a lot of participants here.
It's things take a while to take off.
That's okay. You were on. Okay. Okay. So I had said, we after we banged our heads and kind of cleaned up the blood, we got off at the bus stop for Pushkar, got on a bus for Pushkar, which is maybe about a 20-30 minute bus ride. And so, having spent several hours basking in the spiritual atmosphere of the Darga as we listened to performances of Qawwali and making our escape, we took a bus to the nearby town of Pushkar, home to the only temple in India dedicated to Brahma and a place of Hindu pilgrimage situated at the edge of a small lake. After getting oriented, finding lodging and visiting maybe we did stay the night there, I'm not sure, and visiting the Brahma temple, we headed for the ghats along the lake. As we wandered along the edge of the lake, we were approached by a Brahmin priest who persuaded us to do what pilgrims do there, have the Brahmins perform rituals for our well-being and that of our families. Once we agreed, he began by setting a price for the necessary materials for performing puja. So many rupees for a coconut, so many rupees for incense, and so on and so on. We were starting to think that we were being scammed by this high-pressure ritual specialist, but decided to go along with it anyway. Having organized the necessary accessories, the Brahmin priest led us down to the lake where he directed us into knee-high water and began chanting mantras, waving incense, and manipulating the coconut and other offerings. After a short while, he applied red tika marks to our foreheads and began asking us for further donations. When we offered a small donation of a few rupees, he began to insist that it should be more, perhaps as much as hundreds of rupees, quite a bit at that time. He became more and more insistent, shouting in English, "Mother, long life, father, long life," and began to insinuate that our parents' lives were in danger if we didn't donate a sufficient amount of money. When I told him that both of my parents were deceased, he began to insist that the ritual would ensure their comfort in the afterlife. By now, we had realized that we'd been caught up in what was basically a tourist scam and had to find a way to extricate ourselves without creating a furor. After some intense bargaining, we were eventually allowed to leave after giving him a bit more, though not nearly as much as he had demanded. We had walked away from that experience feeling a bit chastened, feeling that we had been taken in and berating ourselves for our gullibility. In fact, the priest had even kept the coconut we had supposedly bought for future reuse. We realized that the red tika mark was actually a sign to other Brahmins around the lake that we had already, quote, paid our dues.
Mm.
Yet sometime later, I think a couple of weeks later, while skimming through Lord Meher, I came across a passage that put our experience in a different light. In 1922, Meher Baba had traveled to Ajmer with the Mandli, and they had traveled one morning to visit Pushkar, where Baba sent the Irani and Muslim members of the Mandli to worship in the Brahma temple, quote, adhering to Hindu rites. He then directed them to bathe in the lake while, quote, Brahmin priests recited incantations and then applied red tika marks to their foreheads. Once again, it seemed as though we had been unconsciously following in the very footsteps of the Avatar and his Mandli. So something that at the time we thought was, oh, we really, it's kind of useless experience, but then find out later that, oh, actually, when Baba took the Mandli there, he had them do exactly the same thing. So yes, in that as we were traveling around, we had a number of occasions where only in retrospect we realized that we had been in a place that Baba had done something significant or noteworthy. And other times kind of felt that we were being guided
Hmm.
through various experiences.
Am I remembering you went to the Imampur Mosque? Seems to me I saw pictures. Or is that right?
Imam, where is Imam?
Well, it's the one where Baba the dove. Baba was there with it was it the end of
Oh,
the July?
yeah, the Imampur Mosque, the last night of the new life.
Hi,
That's right.
right.
Yeah, I've been there a couple times. Yeah.
So, I have this memory of seeing a photo or a slide or so. I guess it was
Yeah.
Herman, maybe who was, yeah, that you.
Yeah, it was. I think we were up there. Usually, if people traveled to Allura or Ajanta, um, you would pass by the Imampur Mosque, and so typically there would be a brief stop there to go out, check it out. Yeah.
How long was your the where your journey?
Well, we left the day after Amartithi, so February 1st, and I think we probably got back to Mehrabad about the February 22nd or something like that. So about 3 weeks.
And did you cover a lot of territory?
Well, yeah, we, as I said, we started out in Dehradun, Mussoorie, Rishikesh, Haridwar up in the north, and then east to Bihar to Bodh Gaya and Varanasi, and then all the way back west to Rajasthan. Um, so covered a good bit of North India. Yeah.
Hmm.
I have an anecdote I'd like to offer up. I think
Sure.
I've said this in some of the other Zoom meetings, but
Try getting a little closer, Ron,
one
compared
of
to.
my one of the experiences that I had that kind of set a precedent for me was I was working at this place called Clausen House in Oakland. A lot of Baba people worked there, and I got a job there. I stayed there, I think, for about a little over a year as a cook. And but one of the things that I would do sometimes is, by the way, this Clausen House was a residence facility for what we were calling developmentally disabled adults. And so these folks were adults, but they either were somewhat you could say retarded in either emotionally or intellectually. Usually not both, but um, anyhow, it was an interesting thing. Interacting with the residents, and one of the things I did was I would bring my guitar and I'd sing some songs for them every once in a while.
Nice, nice.
Now, one day I had my no, let's see, yeah, I think I had my guitar with me, and this thought popped into my head uh, as to whether or not I should sing at the upcoming Baba meeting. Uh, I think they're usually on Friday nights, if I recall. Uh, so whether or not I should or shouldn't, why I was thinking that I can't remember, but it was it was plaguing me, this decision that I had to try to make, and so I kept on going back and forth trying to figure it out, but I wasn't doing a very good job. And eventually, I turned to Baba within and said, "Baba, what should I do? Should I play or not play?" And there was no forthcoming answer to the question immediately. So eventually, uh, over the next some minutes, I started thinking about it again. Should I or shouldn't I? And what I wasn't doing was waiting for Baba's answer. That was my critical mistake. Um, so what happened was uh, it was time for me to go home. Day was over, and I think I had done everything I was supposed to do that day. Now, leaving this building, this was quite a large facility. I mean, I think it was like a mansion or something. And one feature of it was the front door was gigantic. I mean, it was huge, and it was really, it was thick, and must have weighed hundreds of pounds. Uh, so I was going out of this door, and I had my guitar in one hand, and and so what happened was I was leaving, and when I went to close the door, it didn't close all the way, and then somehow it well it wasn't. Uh, I think the wind kind of sucked it back into the room a little bit, and so instead of grabbing the doorknob to close it, I think the doorknob was in the middle, believe it or not. I don't know. I don't know why I was thinking that, but I didn't grab the doorknob, and I had my guitar in the other hand, and I just put my hand around and tried to like move the door, and then get my hand out when it as it was you know being affected by my little push, and but then some wind kicked up and it closed on my hand.
Oh my gosh.
And it wasn't very long for me to recognize that Baba had finally answered my question. You're not going to be playing the guitar and singing on Friday. You won't be healed in time. So this was this was the beginning of not asking Baba questions that really were not that important. In fact, should I do this or should I not do this? I think I gave up on that. I don't know if I ever had done it before, but apparently he wasn't interested in those kinds of questions, and I didn't get any feedback that I should ask him. So since then I haven't. And
Maybe the feedback was, you got a question? Here's an answer for you.
yeah, exactly. He gave me the answer, but if I would have waited, I think, for the answer rather than kept thinking about it, I don't
Yeah.
think it. I think it could have played out differently because everything plays out in accord with uh, what our thinking is, and so it could have been that he was going to tell me uh, in a different way, but of course, maybe really what he wanted to do was have me take up this don't ask Baba about things that are not all that relevant or important. Um, just figure it out yourself, or try to, be do what you want to do, or and make sure it doesn't displease Baba. So
Yeah.
that was the way I grasped it. I just thought, oh my God, he's given me the answer. That was the first thing. That was a blessing right there that I realized that. That way it took the sting out of the mental sting. Well, there was a mental sting too. I got onto myself about not waiting. You know, just asking Baba and then not being polite enough to await for him to give me an answer. You know, it's it was perfect. So I also had this other Baba story, which is one of my favorites. I know Betty, you probably heard me say this at the art
Oh, I could hear it
one of my
again. I'm sure.
many times because it's just it was a story that I got from reading glimpses. I believe it was volume 4. Balnatu, who was an excellent storyteller and loved stories and promoted storytelling. And um, this meeting could be in his honor. But so this one is one that he told in this Glimpses book. And after I read it, I felt inspired to repeat it. So I kind of like remembered it, and I started to tell it, and now here's the way I remember it. So it has to do with this Baba lover named Shastri, who was from the Andhra group. He was an organizer. There were four organizers in the group, and he was one of the organizers. So when Baba came in '54, uh, he was helping to organize various um, darshan programs at different Baba centers because there were, I mean, it was a happening place. They were really into wanting to be around Baba. I mean, because they were already Baba lovers, and now they got a chance to be around him, and so everybody wanted to have or participate in a darshan. Now, Shastri, this one day had attended one of these darshans, and something had occurred that he felt impacted the way things were being organized, and he was upset about it. So he was brooding about something. I don't even know if it mentioned it in the I don't remember it being mentioned, but he was just brooding about this event that had taken place, or something that hadn't taken place that should have. And then somebody walked in the midst of his this way he was feeling, and asked him, now, Shastri, just double checking that Baba will be coming to the center in a couple of hours, is it right? I mean, you've set it up, right? And then Shastri realized that he hadn't told Baba or the Mandali about this particular center that was going to be expecting him to come, and he hadn't let them know, and so now he got really upset with himself, and he ran over to where Baba was staying. It wasn't very far from where he was, so he went over there. Baba was staying in this house with Pendu and Erich, and all the other Mandali were in a different house, maybe about a mile away. And so he walks in, and then Pendu hears him come in, and he says, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Oh, I have to tell Baba because that I've set up a darshan program for tonight at this particular place, which isn't very far from here. But I'm sorry, I forgot to mention it to Baba and get it set up." And he said, "Well, I don't know what to say about that, but I'll go tell Baba." And so Pendu went upstairs, and he comes back down, and he looks at Shastri and he says, "Baba wants you to come up." So Shastri goes up there. He walks into this room, and what he sees is Baba sitting in front of a plate of food. Apparently, this was his dinner, and he had already done one or two other darshans that day, and so this is his time of rest and sustenance. So of course, Pandu had mentioned the situation to Baba, but Shastri was kind of blown away that he was in this room with no other Mandali or anything, just with Baba by himself, which was unusual. But an odd thought popped into his mind because he saw Baba was about to eat his food. The thought came to him, I wonder if Baba has teeth. He just had this thought. I wonder if Baba has teeth. And I mean, it was one of these thoughts that come in and have no relevance to the main situation, but for some reason that came to mind. He didn't say anything about it, but then Baba stands up and he motions him to come here. And so Shastri walks over to Baba, and he's standing right before Baba. Baba takes a handful. He was just a handful of the food that's on the plate. He's holding it in his hand, and he goes to Shastra. He says, he goes like this. He says, "Open your mouth." He's showing him that what he wants him to do. Open your mouth. And when Baba opens his mouth, Shastri has a good look inside and doesn't see any teeth. And
Oh.
then, while he's got his mouth open, Baba shoves his handful of food into his mouth and he starts chewing on it. Just at that moment, in walks Eruch. So Shastri's chewing on Baba's food, basically. And he's heard from Pendu already about what Shastri's there for. And he starts going after Shastri for intruding into this time of Baba's rest and meal, and Shastri finally swallows the food, and he's trying to explain what happened and how sorry he is that he hadn't mentioned this earlier, and Erich just won't hear of it. He it's inexcusable, and and he's just after Shastri. It's your fault. You have to go tell him, that it was your fault and all this, and, and then Baba steps in. Now imagine this is Erich has to be interpreting Baba's gestures, and or maybe it was on the board. I can't remember. 54. That would have been possibly on the board or gestures, or it could have been both. Who knows? But it was right around the time when Baba stopped using the board. So anyhow, Baba comes up to Shastri. He starts talking to Shastri, and he says, Shastri. He's pointing to Erich, and then he says, Shastri, look at this man here. See how he treats me? See how he takes care of me? He's amazing. He's such a gem of a disciple, and he treats me better than my own mother would. And what Baba does is he puts his hand under Erich's chin, and he's holding it, showing Shastri, this is such a wonderful person. See how he takes care of me? And Shastri's nodding his head, you know. And then Baba looks at Erich finally. And don't forget, Erich is saying these words, which is, I'd love to have been there to see what that was like. But then he says to Erich, "All right, get ready, we're leaving." And so now they've got to. I can't remember who was driving. It probably would have been Erich, but who knows? Somebody. It was Erich and Pendu and Baba get in the car. They had a very short drive. It was like a mile or two to the center. But on their way driving there, Shastri says, "Oh, Baba, look, we're going to be passing by where your other mandali are. Should we? Do you want to stop there and see if they should come? Get them to come." And then this is where Baba gets back at Shastri. He says, "Oh, now you want to bother all my other mandali too, huh? You want to disturb their evening after a full day." And so he took it in stride, I guess. But then Baba says, "Look, when they arrive, Baba says, I have some things that you need to find out whether people will go along with." Uh, uh, and so he says there's three things. If everybody is willing to obey these instructions, then I'll come in and we'll have a darshan. They can have darshan. So the first thing is uh, nobody should give Baba any gifts. No gift should be given. And then also, no one should bow down to Baba. And lastly, and this was a big one, because this was the height of the time. This was like right at the beginning of the time where everybody was saying Avatar Mayor Baba Ki Jai, because he had just in Amirpur, a month or two before, had initiated Avatar Mayor Baba Ki Jai. And so he said, no one should say Avatar Mayor Baba Ki Jai. So if they're willing to obey these instructions, uh, if everyone, it would have to be everybody in the building would have to obey the instructions and be willing to do it. So Shastri goes in. He just flatly tells everybody, this is what Baba wants. Is everybody willing to go along with it? And everybody says they would. So he feels that he's gotten their acceptance. And he goes back out and tells Baba, and Baba says, great, let's go in. So they go in, and Baba is delighted with the people there. He's so happy to be there, and he's telling them, it's so wonderful that you folks are so accommodating me with these instructions, that you're all willing to do what I ask. So I just want you to know that if anybody brought any gifts or anything, that'd be fine. You can give them to me. And if anybody wants to bow down to me, I'll be here until everybody who wants to has the opportunity to do it. And finally, if you're in the mood to say Avatar Mayor Baba Ki Jai, then fine, please do. And they all said Avatar Mayor Baba Ki Jai. So to me, this anecdote is just filled with the way Baba works with people. He takes all kinds of situations and makes so much from them. I mean, just this guy Shastri, what he received for making a mistake, and dealing with it as best he could. Baba gave him such wonderful blessings, as well as all these people, the way Baba would test people's love for him and all. I don't know, just one of my favorites.
Isn't Shastri the one who was removed as was he chair of the trust? I think they voted Kutumba Shastri. I think that was. I guess I should verify that before recording it, but
I don't believe so.
no, okay.
It might have had a similar name. But
No, okay, right. Well, I can tell the dream.
Tell the dream.
Okay,
All
go
right.
ahead.
Okay, I always worked in graphics, publishing. That's where I found out about Baba in Palo Alto in the 70s. Well, actually 68. Baba Lovers worked at Heather worked there. A good friend of mine, Kathy Wiederholt, worked there. There was it was kind of a hippie-ish place, and folks who were connected with Stanford University worked there, and so I got a job there, and I remember early on we this, like I said, was 78, and Kathy was going to be going to the Great Darshan, and those of us who weren't Baba lovers, we liked her so much that we were just sort of taken by the whole notion that she was going off, and I sewed her a dress, and somebody else lent her some money. It was kind of a group effort, and I remember we had a silence day where she started out writing notes, and by the end of the day, many of us were writing. It was fun. It was a game. We that was, and so that was my introduction to Baba. So graphics was really, and since then, I worked with Jay Bonner for a while, Shireen Bonner's husband. Seemed to be a Baba flavor about the place. So, okay, graphics was important. But later on, my good friend Babs Gildersleeve and I, we seemed to be in those days. Artists, graphic art. Well, it was before computers. Graphic artists. They called it a stable. There was often one boss of the, and they'd have a crew of 6 or 7 artists working on paste up, really kind of simple, not really fine art, but and they would, and the boss would find us jobs at various, there were several publishing companies in the Bay Area at that time. It was just a different world. Babs and I worked together in several places, and oh God, one of them was like we were doing manuals for tanks. It was like the army. It was very gray, and oh my God, so not fun. It was and uninspiring. I was getting pretty fed up with it, and about then we went off to the LA Sahabas. And I was sort of commiserating with Adele about how I was pretty unhappy with this. And she noticed I was there taking care of an elderly woman, a Sufi, who needed a companion. So her name was Ruth Chase. She became a good friend. So I was there helping her. And Adele noticed this, and she said, you do that so nicely. Maybe you should think about, maybe it's your job that's bothering you. Maybe why not look into nursing? So I thought, well, Adele met Baba. Maybe I should listen. So I took a course, an introductory course at a junior college, and I figured that's what I'd be doing. So this is how this sets up the stage for this dream that I had. So in this dream, Babsy, my good friend, my artist friend, and I were there with Baba, and Baba was kind of sitting on a dais like at East West Gathering, little Babas. And I guess what we were doing was kind of sorting out what our mission was, what we would be doing. And I remember turning to Babsy and saying, "Okay, Babsy, you do the graphics, and I'll do nursing." And Baba said, no, he said, "I want you to do graphics too." He said, "You have good perspective." So that was that. But I never understood what he meant about perspective. Was it drawing? I wasn't a very good drawer. I never sort of sorted out that word. What was it? Perspective? And so over time, now what, 50 some years with Baba, as all of us are here, and having seen a lot go down in the Baba world here in the West, and all kinds of problems and issues, and I just came to the conclusion that what perspective was just, I've been around long enough that I've seen it. I have my own feelings about things, but that's what perspective. That's what I worked in newsletters. Berkeley newsletter, Oregon newsletter, Love Street Lamppost. Worked on a lot of publications talking about the Baba world, and so anyway, that's all. That's it. I do have perspective. I think we all have, having lived as long as we have in this world, as in this part of this community, which is interesting to say the least. Yeah, there it is. Oh my gosh, that's right. Ron and I worked. That was the 100th anniversary pamphlet, I guess you'd say. We printed thousands of them, yeah? Ron and I worked on that together. I remember the meeting where Ron had to persuade the Berkeley Baba group that this was a worthwhile effort. Do you remember that, Ron? You were gonna have to you asked for $5,000 back then, and that was just that was a big ask. And I remember you standing up and And I would justify, and I remember Ed Van Buskirk stood up and said he supported you. What was it? He said, I think he cited Joseph Harb. He said that he would have, am I right? He would have, this is what Baba would have wanted and I can't remember the words, but he said
Let,
Joseph would have been okay with this. Go ahead.
let's tell this at another one of our meetings.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, that'd be
because
good.
to me it was an amazing the way that all unfolded. Yeah.
You and I didn't know each other very well. I don't, yeah. And I wound up working nights at my publishing company always, but that place turned out to be my office many times, doing various, Baba projects. It was work time and then it was my time and I got to use all the equipment. Yeah. I guess we're kind of near time, are we?
Not necessarily.
Uh,
Jim, did you have another anecdote, or were those the two that you talked about? I can't remember.
The two that I talked about, I was just reminded of one incident for some reason while just in the last couple of minutes, small incident of I guess master's intervention.
There you go.
So back in when I first heard of Baba, that was in I was going to college in Portland, Oregon, and then there was I and a couple of other people who were on the campus of Reed College learned about Baba, or learned more about Baba from Judith Lipton, who was a student but had come from Chapel Hill and had attended that talk, the infamous talk that Rick Chapman gave there. Got caught up in it and sort of so there was some interest there in Baba on campus. And then in the fall of 1968, Ben Wright moved to Portland. And he opened a macrobiotic restaurant called the Wayfarer. And the Wayfarer was in what's just off in the Burnside district of Portland. If you're familiar with Portland, that's what at the time was known as Skid Row. It was a place where, homeless drunks wandered the streets and so on and so on. Anyway, he opened this restaurant, and at a certain point, I ended up working there for a while, and a couple of other Baba people were working there as well. And there was a couple who worked there, Sam and Candy Smith, who were devotees of a Sikh guru. I forget the guru's name. At one point, actually, their guru had met Baba, and Baba had confirmed that he was a fifth plane saint.
Oh my.
So I was working there, and they were working there, and because of their connections, they arranged for a visit by Yogi Bhajan, who was a very kind of controversial guru figure in the early 70s, to come and have a kind of meet and greet session at the Wayfarer. And so I became kind of very mixed feelings about that. I said, well, on the one hand, I'm an employee there. I should show up. I should be polite and so on and so on. On the other hand, what about Baba's warning against avoiding other masters and so on, those kinds of things. And so I was really torn about what to do. I showed up there, but I felt very, very, very uncomfortable. And so I'm standing somewhere in the dining room, and Yogi Bhajan and a small entourage come in, sweep by me, and just behind them comes in a drunk Indian who makes a beeline for me and basically pushes me into a corner and starts to tell me about his life. And he tells me that he was a Blackfoot Indian, and how he was drafted into the army, and he fought uh, in the Korean War, and described graphically about how his best friend was killed next to him, and he was almost killed, and so on. And he's kind of going on and on and on. I can't escape from him. He's got me cornered, and he's just going on and on and on about his miserable life, and so on, so on, so on. And that goes on for about an hour, and then I see Yogi Bhajan leaving. And as soon as Bhajan leaves, he just turns around and walks away.
See, that's Baba's agent.
Oh,
Baba's temporary agent, yeah,
he saved you. He saved you from getting swept up in the
right, yeah,
Yeah.
atmosphere of the.
It's sort of like when Darwin, well, in a way, it's sort of like Darwin Shaw not wanting to bow down at Upashni Maharaj's tomb. You know, he was feeling
right,
so uncomfortable about it, and then Baba says, "Go ahead and do it." And then Baba puts his hand on his forehead so that he realized he was bowing down to Baba's hand.
right, yeah.
Yeah, you know that intervention, like you said.
Yeah, but it was such an obvious intervention in retrospect. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good story.
Wow, that is a good
I
story.
have an intervention story. This is a quick one. You may have heard this story before, but it's fun. This Baba lover woman was going home, and she thought she would take a shortcut and cut through this field. So she was walking through this field, and all of a sudden, this man comes up to her and grabs her, and does not, she doesn't know who this is. And he starts grabbing for the gold bangles on her wrists. This is where the wealth of the family is being kept, is on her wrist, and he's trying to get them off her wrist, and he's struggling with her, and she doesn't want to surrender these things, so they're tussling back and forth, and she feels that she should call out for Baba, and so she starts calling Baba's name loudly, and there was this uh, uh, a cow in the field, and the cow comes up and drives this guy away with his horns, and he leaves. He runs away because the cow is chasing him, and and the woman gets away, which is which is one of Baba's few bovine interventions. You have the divine intervention, but
Um,
uh, not that usual as the bovine intervention.
Yeah. Yeah.
did you hear the story from the woman herself?
No, I don't remember where I heard the
Uh,
story.
mhm.
I don't think I made it up, but I did make up the last part. That's how it struck me.
Jim, oh, Jim, I wanted to ask you, you said that Rick Chapman gave one of his infamous talks. What did you mean by that at Reed College?
No, not at Reed College, in Chapel Hill.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Right. There was the one where um, he was invited to Chapel Hill and gave a talk about Baba. And somehow, when he got back to Myrtle Beach, because they notified that Baba that he was going to give a talk in Chapel Hill, they get back and there's a cable from Baba saying basically, thank you for giving darshan for me.
Oh my.
Yeah.
My.
And it was like, the next day or the next weekend, there was this flood of people who were there who flooded down to Myrtle Beach.
Wow.
Yeah, I heard as many, maybe 50 people.
Yeah, a lot.
That's a lot.
Wow.
Well, in those days, a lot.
Yeah, yeah. That was the time when uh, people were unusually open to it.
True.
It's like a little
True.
window of time when
Yeah.
people opened up to spiritual
Mhm.
things and Eastern philosophies and things of that sort. It just became a thing for a while.
They were looking. Yeah.
Steve, where were you living in Oregon?
Me, I was living in near Salem, about an hour south
Okay.
of Portland. Mhm.
Yeah. Uh,
It's where we held Sahabases for quite a few years. First, it was Jim and Jean Wilson. I don't know if you know them. They were there for 30 years in a little tiny town called Scotts Mills, um, east of Salem.
yeah.
They started out the tradition of Sahabas there. And then Dave and myself, my husband, we were there for almost 20 years. We had Sahabases for another, I guess. Well, I think we didn't have many. 7 or 8 Sahabases maybe, and then Dave
Okay.
was not well.
I don't know if you ever knew about basically the origins of the Baba group in Oregon, or at least in Portland.
Yeah, do you have that story?
Uh, well, it's a long story, but it's a brief kicker story. So, as I said, by uh, well, let me set it up this way. I first heard about Baba in December of '67. I was visiting a friend in New York, and and just before I went to the airport to fly back to Portland, I went into a bookstore. I was looking for something interesting, couldn't find anything interesting. And I was about to walk out, and I looked on the counter, and there was a Baba card there.
Wow.
And so I just they were selling it for like 5 cents or something like that. So I just said, "Oh, that's well, actually not a Baba card, Baba button,
Mm.
the Baba button." And so I just bought the button. I put it on, and I was about to leave, and I said, "Oh, who is this anyway?"
You put
And the
it on,
clerk
and
says,
then you said, "Who is this?"
"Yeah." So I was attracted to the button, but then, oh, what is it, right? So then I said, he said, "Oh, Meher Baba," and I said, "Do you have anything about him?" He said, "Well, there's some pamphlets over here." And so I go and I see a pamphlet called The New Humanity, and I pay 15 cents or something, and I leave and I read that on the way back to Portland, and really am very impressed by it. And I'm wearing my Baba button, and I get back to campus, and classes are about to start. And I'm walking across campus one day, past a woman I know slightly, and she just says, "Jay Baba." And I say, "Jay Baba." And then, I keep going, and then I think, "Oh, what is that about?" And I see her a little later and say, "What is that? What are you talking about?" She says, "Well, that button, Mayor Baba." And so I said, "Oh, yeah, that, yeah, that." And then she tells me about her experience, and she had a copy of the discourses and some other things. So I start to read that. Uh, and then so that's in, January of 1968. And then in the fall, I guess must be around October, November of 1968, Ben Wright moved to Portland with the idea of setting up a restaurant and had been given Judith Lipton's information by Kitty. And so, around Thanksgiving of 68, he contacts her and says, "Oh, I don't know if you know Ben Wright's story about how he traveled from Turkey to India looking for Baba and got as far as Adi K. Irani's office, but Baba wouldn't see him, and
Wow.
so
Oh,
on." Oh, it's an incredible story. Yeah. That's another story. Anyway, so he's says, "I'm busy, building this restaurant and fixing it up, getting it ready to open. Why don't we meet in January?" So they decide that anyone interested in Baba should come to Ben's house on the night of January 30th.
oh my gosh.
And so there's myself, my girlfriend at the time, um, Judith Lipton, her husband, a couple of other people. So maybe about 6 people plus Ben Wright and his girlfriend, about 8 of us. And we have a kind of maybe potluck dinner, I think. And then Ben starts to tell this story, incredible story uh, of going to try to meet Baba, but not being able to beat Baba, and Baba sent him back to go and meet with Kitty and so on. And so, at that time I had heard about the Sahabas. Uh, didn't think that, I mean, the 69 Sahabas. I didn't think I was going to do there. I wasn't that maybe interested, but his story really um, touched me and said, "Oh, I'd really like to have Baba's darshan." Yes. Um, and so this is the evening of January 30th in Portland. They were there till about 11 o'clock at night. So what time is it in
Oh my gosh. Let's see.
January 31st?
Morning, 11:30 in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah, or actually
Well, I don't know about daylight savings
about
time.
12. Yeah, right. So that was really the first, I think, Baba meeting in Oregon
Oh.
that coincided with Baba's dropping the body at the same time.
Wow.
It's a very heavily charged account.
Did you all get together after?
Yeah, yeah. Well, then we began to have sort of regular, or at least irregular meetings. More and more people got interested, but we didn't have any leadership. We weren't sure what you were supposed to do at a meeting, right? We didn't have any musicians, and so we tried various kinds of things. But I think historically that's the foundation of Baba groups in Oregon.
Coming to Baba through a button. That may be, that's not that usual, I don't think. But it's a great thing, I think.
Yeah,
Shows how
yeah,
Baba can how he can do his thing.
Mhm.
What's that?
yeah.
Who's that?
I don't know if Ben has ever told his story. Actually, it's quite an amazing story of he was living in the mountains above Beirut, Lebanon, as a drug dealer with a friend of his, and for some reason they had a copy of God Speaks. And one night he awakes after a dream, and his friend awakes after a dream, and it turns out that it's exactly the same dream in which Baba tells them to pack up, get out of the cave, and leave. And they pack up, they leave in the middle of the night,
Wow.
get up in a hill above that, and they see that the police have raided that
Wow.
cave.
All this is still in the dream, right?
No,
No, this really
no,
happened?
it really happened. Yeah,
Oh, the dream, Baba told him to
the,
get up and then in
get
real,
out, and
oh.
they take it seriously, get out.
Mhm.
And so then they trying to decide what to do and said, well, let's go to India. So they start hitchhiking um, across Asia to India. And all they know about uh, Baba really is that he was born in Pune. So at some point they split up, but Ben goes to Pune and figures, well, people here must know where he lives because he must be very famous here and so on. And Ben spends, I don't know, several weeks in Pune walking around everywhere asking, anyone ever hear of Meher Baba? Nobody's heard of him. Right? But finally, he meets somebody by accident, and they say, "Oh, you need to go talk to Adi K. Irani." He goes to Adi K. Irani, and he says, "Well, Baba's in seclusion, but I'll tell him you're here, and um, he may want to see you or not." And so Baba sends back instructions for him to go back to the United States, do this, do that, but sends him away. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody else with that, getting that close and being turned away. Wow.
There were actually a few Westerners who got that close
Mm.
and then were turned away. Yeah.
Is Ben Wright still alive? Do you know?
Yeah. He lives in the Bay Area there.
He does.
Yeah.
Oh, hmm.
Somebody posted on Facebook a picture of Baba, and it put me in touch with part of my story of how I came to Baba. It was a very significant photo, which appears in the universal message that was published. This is
Uh-huh.
Oh,
that
uh-huh.
photo. So somebody
Right.
had used that photo and posted something, and so I mentioned this part of my Baba story, the climactic part of my coming to Baba, which took about a year, as from start to finish. Um, I want to tell you how that played into it. That makes it shorter. Otherwise, it's a long thing, going up to it. So I won't mention any of that. But I'll get to the point where, at some point, um, I came across a book. What I would be doing for the year was I'd go into a bookstore, or I'd look on a bookshelf or something, and a book would be there, and it would get my attention, and I'd read it, and um, and it would always be somehow significant and important in my journey, uh, looking for whatever I was looking for, wanting to find out what the life was all about and who I was and all this kind of thing. But so I came across this book called The Master Game, and I read it, and it seemed to say that if you want higher consciousness or something like that, don't take drugs. And I just read Pete Townsend's article in the Rolling Stone about that, um, and I knew about Baba, of course, but I didn't ever think of Baba as a master that was being suggested in this book, because Baba had dropped the body at that point. This was in 1970, um, and so at some point, um, I went to this park, and this fellow who had heard about Baba at the same Atlanta Rock Festival as I did. I don't know if anybody ever met Charlie Manna, but he told me about Hermes Ryder was holding these uh, classes at the University of Miami where they had a free room to use, and they were reading God Speaks. And he said, "You need to go to that," because I was all about wanting to know stuff. I was fascinated by what I was learning and what it was coming to mind and all this. And so when I would go to those meetings, uh, and after reading the book, well, Hermes and his girlfriend at the time, for some reason, and they would refer to Baba as the master. I had never, well, I didn't really know that many Baba lovers at all at that point. Um, so I was just starting to meet Baba lovers, but and I don't think they ever did it after that, as I was neighbors with them for a while after. Um, but they would refer to him as the master, and so this one day, I was sitting in my apartment, and I had taken this picture out of the Universal Message where Hermes Ryder had left this in a health food store that I went to, and I read it, and I read God Speaks, and I knew Baba knew everything. I mean, the authority and what he said, I just knew that he knew everything because I didn't need to know anything anymore because I was overwhelmed by what was offered in that book. Um, so I'm sitting there. There's one thing I don't know, and that is who's my master. So I'm thinking of this person, that person. There weren't really very many nominations, candidates for who's going to be my master. And but then I looked at the picture on the wall of Baba, who I used to talk to now and again, and I said, "Baba, you know everything. So at least you could tell me who my master is." And so he said, "You." I think he said, "You dummy," referred to me. "You're looking at him. It's me. I've always been there." I, there's other things that come into it that make that even more profound. But um, that picture was very important, and as I started my relationship with Baba with that photo on a wall. Just it reminded me of getting started with Baba on a picture on a button. I mean,
Mhm.
that's power. That's the power of God.
Yeah.
And it's so natural, That's the thing about Baba and the way he intervenes in our lives and comes in. He's so natural. It all just flows out in a story.
Yeah.
Well, I think we did quite the job here, and we can
Yeah, we
come back
did well.
come back again next
Yeah.
week. Maybe we'll have a few more uh, tellers. And thanks for everybody for
Yeah.
tuning in.
We'll see. I bet there'll be a few people watching this and they may come. It starts that way.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really need a whole lot of people. We just
Right.
need stories, right?
Mm,
Here, but if they
yeah.
enjoy listening to them, that's the important part.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
All right.
have a good day and
Yeah,
Jim, bye.
Baba.
Hey, Baba.
Glad you came back, Jim.
Yeah. See you again.
Yep, yep. Okay. Have a good rest of the day. Where are you, Jim?
I'm just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay, sure. Oh, yeah. Okay, so it's evening. All right.
Yeah, it's